Hello, All-Stars. Today, as part of our continued discussion on the environment, we will discuss pathogens and transmissions. For those of you that don't know, a pathogen is the fancy word for a microorganism that is infectious and causes disease. This is on the test, by the way. A few different examples that you should know are viruses, bacteria, parasites, fungi, and Protoctis. And you should have an idea of an example of each one. The flu is one of the most famous examples of a virus. Bacteria are single-celled organisms that exist in the millions in every environment, both inside and outside other organisms. Some bacteria are good and necessary, like the bacteria that exists in your colon and the bacteria that they use to help make streptomycin. Salmonella is an example of a harmful bacteria, as well as E. coli, which are forms of foodborne illnesses, also on the test. Fungi are tricky because not all fungi are harmful, such as the mushrooms we consume. However, fungus such as mucor, for example, are considered harmful to humans and thus considered pathogenic. Malaria is considered a Protoctis and is often forgot about in the wonderful world of pathogens. A transmissible disease. This is a disease in which the pathogen can be passed from one host to another. So that's just like a fancy way of saying it can be spread. It's a disease that can be spread between things. So there are many modes or methods of transmission. That just means ways that an illness can be spread or transmitted. There is direct transmission. That would be like contact between people when they touch, mixing of body fluids via sexual contact, for example. And then there are indirect methods via contaminated foods, which we will be focusing on today as part of our environmental journey. There's also potentiality of contamination or infection via indirect or direct contact with animals, the air, water, etc., where some pathogens live. An important mode of transmission is called a vector. Vectors are organisms that do not necessarily cause disease itself, but spread infection by carrying disease-causing microbes such as viruses, bacteria, and plasmodia. Some well-known vectors are mosquitoes, which is the topic of your Deadly Messengers forum assignment next week, ticks, fleas, and bats as well. There are lots of ways to reduce transmission, and I want you to be thinking about this during today's class activity. One of the most obvious ways to reduce transmission, particularly in our food production and consumption, is proper hygiene. This means proper techniques and practices that we should be utilizing during the farming process, during processing, in retail, and at home when we're making our meals. Some of the most important hygienic food preparation practices that we should engage in are washing your hands before touching food or wearing gloves, keeping your hair out of food, avoid coughing and sneezing around food, keeping animals away from food, flies if you can, keeping food at proper storage temperatures, cooking foods to a proper temperature also means making sure that you don't undercook your food, that you make sure that foods are stored properly in cold temperatures, and also making sure that you keep things such as raw meat separate from your other foodstuffs. Another method is maintaining personal hygiene. A lot of oil and dirt accumulate on the skin and under the fingernails throughout the day. And obviously that means that pathogens are also going to be on the skin. And pathogens love dirt. So keep in mind that sweat encourages bacteria. So washing regularly as a way of reducing transmission is highly effective. Next would be waste disposal. Obviously, mice, rats, and dogs are attracted to food waste, and it's a really good place for bacteria to multiply considering all of that leftover food waste are potential nutrients and potential fuel for bacteria, especially the amount of dung and feces that these creatures leave behind. Again, pathogens love this stuff. So well-designed landfill sites are essential for reducing transmission. Also, things like taking out the trash regularly and not letting it build up for too long are extremely important. The other thing is sewage treatment. Obviously, toilets and kitchen waste are a breeding ground for pathogens. If somehow sewage managed to contaminate our drinking water, like what happened to our friends over in Broad Street, England, that's a pretty dangerous pathway for transmission. So the correct treatment of sewage is essential to make sure that dirty, filthy water doesn't cross-contaminate with our drinking water. We're going to be doing a class exercise shortly, so please keep in mind that there are 31 foodborne pathogens known to man, but we, for today, will be researching the 13 most popular or the most prevalent. These pathogens were responsible for nearly 48 million incidents of exposure in 2020 and nearly a little bit over 100 deaths. So please take the assignment seriously, but have fun with it as well. Also, please keep these 4 steps in mind that I mentioned earlier while doing your research and filling out your forms. These are the 4 places where opportunities for mitigating risk of exposure can happen, right? Farm, processing, retail, and at home when we're preparing our meals. Okay, so now it's time for our most unwanted exercise. Have fun with it and let's go.